Adele, I think you're on. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Graciel, for hosting us through, and just to welcome us through this session of today. That is session 3, open tools and resources when it comes to open science, and we are very glad to have you. I can already see members introducing themselves in the frame pad. Kindly, if you don't have the link, you can kindly communicate that so that we can reshare in the chat box. I can see Victoria, Natalie, I can see Lillian, and thank you all for joining. So just to let you know that this call is being recorded and transcribed. So you can turn your webcam if you don't mind, then the video will be available on OLS YouTube channel. Then the captions are also available. So you can click the double C button on the Zoom so that you are able to have the captions on. And just to let us know to go through the code of conduct. So we will just like to encourage everyone to participate and be committed on building a community for all. So be considerate, be respectful, don't use inflammatory statements or chats, just to ensure that we be considerate and respectful. And remember that we are a worldwide community, so especially when communicating to someone, you might not be communicating to someone's primary language. Then if you witness any acceptable behavior or any other concern, please report this to the contracting organizers. So you can reach to Graciel. There's the email address there for the OLS team. Then you can also report any issue involving the organizers. So you can email one of the members, either Sarah or Graciel. The email addresses are provided in the frame pad. And then there's also just intro into the frame pad etiquette. So we will have the breakout rooms, and just as Graciela has reminded you, you can add W for written participation and S for the spoken participation. So this will just ensure that we allocate you best in the breakout rooms. So kindly ensure that you do that so that we don't have a problem with allocation. So if you are okay with both, you can choose one, especially for this week. Then if you need any help during the breakout room, you can click the ask for help button, or you can actually reach out to any of the organizers, either Graziel, who is the host, or I. Yeah, so our presenter today will be Jafsia, and Jafsi, welcome so much. And Graciel will be our host, and I'll also be facilitating the today's session. So we welcome you all to today. Jafsia, it is your floor to proceed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Magak. Thank you, Graciel. Let me share my screen. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Open Tools, to the session Open Tools and Resources 1. My name is Elise Jafsia. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm really glad you are here. Today, we are going to move beyond the why of open science and focus on the how. We will talk about the actual tools, the legal licenses, and the design principles that make openness work in real-world research and organization settings, especially here in Africa and in the global South. This session is part of the Open Seeds program, and we build up around two big pillars. First, open by design, and second, open licenses. We'll also have two interactive exercises coming up. So please keep your chat window open and get ready to jump into breakout rooms. Let's start with a story that shows exactly why it matters. We start with a reflection, which is the Sierra Leone Ebola data dilemma. In 2014, West Africa faced the worst Ebola outbreak in history. So researchers worked quickly to sequence the virus in Sierra Leone. But here is the problem. The raw genomic data was not shared openly for months. What happened? Scientists around the world couldn't track how the virus was mutating in real time. Vaccine development slowed. And because the data was locked away, the people who suffered most were the very community the research was meant to help. Now, I want you to think about three questions for just a moment. First question is, who suffered most from locked data? What if data was open from day one? Does the data collecting country own it? Let's take 3 to 5 minutes and reflect in the chat. So I will wait and read some of your answers. Forty says for one, the population, the impact on those who suffer from disease. Another reaction, Claire says, for one, patients and affected people. What if the data was open from day one? Would have scientific progress may have been quicker. Question number 3, the funder sponsor usually owns it unless they publish with an open license. Forty says question number 3 is the most difficult to answer. The data belongs to the patients. Jolie, the data collected could have been used by other scientists. First, question number 2, which could improve the response to similar outbreaks. Okay, thank you for those insights. Someone said the affected communities suffer most absolute. That's absolutely. Another person noted that open license may have accelerated vaccine development. And the question about ownership, so that's the most difficult question, as Forty said, the third question about ownership is exactly what we will tackle today. The key takeaway is this: when the data is locked, the most vulnerable pay the price. Openness is not just an ethical ideal, it can save lives. All right, let's dive into part one, open by design. The subtitle here is From Invisible Workflows to Transparent Collaboration. And I want you to hold that phrase in your head, invisible workflows. Too often we treat openness as a final step. You know, we publish a report at the end. We'll upload the data after the project closes. But that's too late. That's too late. Open by design means planning, transparency, collaboration, and accessibility from day one. At the proposal stage, before you either collect a single piece of data. Let's look at what that actually means. What are open tools and resources? When we say open tools, we are talking about a whole ecosystem, much more than just free software. Let me walk you through each piece. Open access means research outputs are freely available to anyone. That includes journals like PLOS ONE, but also preprints on a platform called Africa Archives, which is a fantastic resource for African researchers. Open collaboration is about working together transparently across borders, communities, like Open Seeds actually, and tools like Framapad that we are using to let people co-write and co-create in real time. Open source means using programming languages and tools like R, Python, and Jupyter notebooks instead of expensive closed-off software to democratize what and how we can do rigorous analysis. Open data means sharing your data sets on repositories like Zenodo or the Open Science Framework, following what we call the FAIR principles. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interpretable, interoperable, and reusable. And finally, open peer review. Platforms like F1000 Research, where the review process is transparent and public, not hidden behind closed doors. Now, here's the important thing. These categories don't work in isolation. You could have open data, but if your analysis runs on a pay tool that most people can't afford, you still build a barrier. So we need to think about the whole system. Open by default versus open by design. There is a critical distinction I want you to understand because it shapes everything we do. Open by default is a reactive approach. You do your research, and at the very end, you share your outputs. For example, a report, a data set, whatever it is. It's like building a glass house. People can see in, they can watch what you are doing, but they are mostly passive observers. Transparency exists, but genuine collaboration does not. That's open by default. Open by design, on the other hand, is proactive. You start planning openness when you write your proposal. You decide how data will be shared, which tools you will use, and how community will access and engage with your findings, all before you begin. I like to call this the empowerment model. Instead of a glass house, it's more like a shared workshop. Community members become partners, not just spectators. So as we go through the rest of the session, ask yourself, is my project a glass house or a true partnership? Glass house for open by default, or true partnership for an open by design approach. Implementing open by default, the glass house model. Let me be honest, many organizations think they have been open when they do this. They put their goals, timelines, and budget on a public website. They create a shared drive with meeting notes and reports. They add an online suggestion box for feedback. It really is. But notice what's missing. The community is a passive observer. You are informing them, but you are not co-creating with them. You are not sharing power or decision-making. This model is common, but it misses the transformative potential of open source. So let's look at the alternative. Implementing open by design, which is the empowerment model. First element about the open by design is the inclusive participation. It is not just about the website, but a community forum. Radio calls in shows and advisory boards that can actually have decision-making power. You invite people in your project, in your work, as equals. Second element is co-creation. You run workshops to design solutions together. You are not extracting data from them. You are building with them. Third element is radical accessibility. You produce resources in multiple languages, including videos or audio, so that people with different literacy level can engage fully with your work. So it's not everyone that can read a 100-page report or thesis in English, in French, in Spanish, or other languages. So that's why it's really, really important to have a multilingual approach when we are working or trying to implement our project on an open by design basis. So let's take a case study from invisible to citizens. This was my project when I joined OLS. And it was about the issue of children without birth certificates in the northern region, particularly the far north region of Cameroon, which are legally invisible. Meaning invisible because they don't officially exist. Now, if we are taking an open by design approach for this particular project, what we'll have done is to produce a report that says birth registration rates are low, and here are our recommendations. I'll list the recommendation, and the report might sit on a shelf somewhere. It would not change anything for the families. But using open by design, I will have engaged straight with the parents, involve local leaders and community authorities in data collection, partners with already existing NGOs in the area, create multilingual material so everyone could understand the process regardless of their language or literacy level. The results will be community took ownership of the project, registration went up, children gain legal identity, and this will happen not because of a report and list of recommendation, but because your research was designed with the people, not just about the people, but with the people. This is why open by design should be the standard for open research. So this is the end of part one. And we'll have our first activity after this presentation of part one. And it's your turn to walk through a real ethical dilemma. This is the scenario. Imagine an NGO in DRC Congo that is tracking internal displacement caused by conflict in the North Kivu. They have collected 3 types of data: GPS coordinates of displaced household, ethnicities, and trauma levels. Now, a European university partner asks for the raw data set so that they can build a machine learning model to predict future displacement. Here are your questions for the breakout rooms. Can this data be shared openly? Why or why not? What open by design principle should have been applied before data collection even started? And 3, how will you structure a data sharing agreement that protects displaced community while still allowing ethical research? So we'll take 10 minutes. Graciel will send you into breakout room now. When you will come back, we'll share key insights, and then I will take the questions about this first part of the presentation.
Amazing. Just a reminder to summarize your discussions in the Pad so we can share that with the folks who cannot join the live session, so they can learn from us as well. I am going to open the rooms. If you have any issues with the room that you're assigned, you can always come back to the main room and ask to be reassigned to another room. All right, have fun. Yeah, and the question is also on the Pad. Thank you. All right, I think everyone is back. There are some people still taking notes, like finalizing some thoughts. Who wants to summarize what was the discussion in your group? Maybe start with group 1. Futis, Chang, Jorley, Stephen, and Maite.
I can start, but I encourage anyone from the group to add to what I will say, just to be to make sure that everyone's point of view here is heard. So we started the discussion from, of course, from question 1, and I think we were towards the no, shared openly. I think we said it's not easy to share this kind of data. I think there's a lot of risk because people can be identified. I mean, from coordinates, where they stay, where they're moving. So certainly not in the raw form, the way the data are sort of produced or gathered by the NGO. In that sense, maybe we discussed there is maybe a practice of anonymization or some sort of aggregation. There are several anonymization or pseudonymization techniques that, of course, have been can be applied maybe to produce a sort of data set that does not necessarily put at risk the participants of this study. But so more or less sharing here is complicated, and it's about the level of openness and how the data is going to be managed throughout this process. And then we went into the second question, which more or less continued from question 1, which is Maite had this kind of point about the open by design, whether we could have from the beginning informed consent, explicit consent from the participants to share their data or how their data should be managed. But then I asked also the question like, is it possible to really have informed consent in this situation? We're talking about a very serious situation of displacement. So to me, it's a little bit also the ethical aspect of the situation. That's where I brought the concept of care principles, which is not always mentioned, and it's not been mentioned today. For example, we focus a lot on care principles on a lot of webinars, but not enough on care principles, which to me here it's about the community and the community having control of how their data is shared. And I think this sort of took us to a place where, what is the ethical thing to do? And how to really find the balance between consent and having the community having the ownership to do what they want to do with their data. I don't think we had enough time to go to the third aspect, but my I think on this point also said maybe like a data management plan or a very structured process from the beginning could help. Let's say from the beginning. I think the open by design also might answer the third question. So more or less, that's what we had time for. But I do encourage others here to speak up if I left something important out. And then very quickly, we mentioned about, I asked the question about whether the European university and the element of Europe here played a role in terms of how we share the data. If another African country would ask for the data, would make a difference in this question. In what sense and in what form we share the data. Where Stephen then just said his perspective that in this particular scenario we don't think it's an issue, but of course we keep that in mind in terms of how relationships have been structured over the last centuries, let's say, between the different regions. So, and this is always an element that comes now into discussions moving forward. So I think this is more or less the discussion. I do apologize if I misrepresented something here. So thank you very much.
Awesome. And waiting a bit to see if others in the group want to speak something or compliment or no? All good? Okay. Awesome. Let's see the next group. We have Oweisin and Mohammed. I think they were in a spoken room, I guess. Well, if you don't want to unmute. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey. Hi. Yay. Love it. Do you want to summarize the discussion that you had in the group?
Okay. Yeah, but we had a little challenge with our network. But in general, the first question, we agreed that it can only be shared if there are some modifications to what can be given to the partners. And what's opened by design principle should have been applied. We said there should have been an informed consent to the people should have filled an informed consent and told exactly what they should expect, because having all that information can open them to harm and the rest. So were they willing to share that just in case there was a mistake somewhere and it's left the right hands into the wrong one? Then how would you structure the data sharing agreement? From what was there, we said they can mask the data or remove the sensitive part completely. And then there should be a strict rule of use, no commercialization. It shouldn't be open. Yes, we're talking about open science, but there are some informations that shouldn't be open. I think that should be included in the agreement. So in summary, that was what we agreed on. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, that really speaks to the principle that we have to always reinforcing as open as possible, as closed as necessary. Sometimes you have an open by design policy or idea and design of a project, and then you start closing as you need in the process. The next group, I think it was a written group. They have a lot of notes. Let me try to summarize it. They say that GPS data is highly sensitive, so it should not be shared openly unless aggregated to protect individuals. That's also true for species at risk. Note from the ecologist here. And they're still taking notes. That's amazing. We should share only the identified data, and the research output must benefit the affected community and not just the researchers of people or people funding. And the data should be made accessible to only reliable individuals and organizations. Those are great points. I think it also connects a little bit with the care principles that were mentioned earlier. And then room 7, we don't know if they have collected consent from people about how their data will be used. Then the data sharing agreement should specify what the data can be used for, what security and protection should be applied, if there are any restriction requirements. It could also specify what treatments will be applied to the data prior to sharing, what obligations the recipients have towards the data subjects, all great points. And those were the last notes. Yeah. Passing the mic over to Elise.
Thank you, Graciela. Let me share back my screen. Okay. Thank you for all the interventions. Can note that a few of you noted that GPS coordinate plus ethnicity data in a conflict zone could be extremely dangerous, particularly in this context of North Kivu. And I think Fortis asked about the fact that if it was an African university or a European university asking for the data, I think it would have been the same. Imagine that, particularly in this context of North Kivu, there is an armed group there called the M23. And they are tracking a displaced person. Imagine they get those data. So they will be able to easily track the person and get to him. So I think it's extremely dangerous if those data fails into the wrong hands. And you are absolutely right. Other groups pointed that open by design means planning anonymization. Yeah, we need anonymization. And consent before collection, not after the collection, but before the collection, we need consent. And the consensus with all the groups seems to be that open does not mean unconditionally public. It means open within a framework of ethical responsibility and community protection. So, congratulations to all the groups. Great work. Thank you so much. Now, let's jump to the second part of our presentation, which is about open licenses. I think this is the part that people often find confusing or even a little dry. But it's actually the legal foundation that makes everything else possible. You can have the best open tools or resources in the world. You can share your data on a public repository, but if you don't attach the right license to your work, legally speaking, it is not open. So let's demystify this together. Why open licenses matter? Here is the biggest misconception in open science. People assume that if they upload something online, for example, a report, a data set, a presentation, it's automatically open. That's a misconception. This is not true. Under default copyright law, the moment you create a work, it receives what is called all rights reserved. all rights reserve protection. That means nobody else can legally translate it, adapt it, teach with it, or build upon it without your explicit permission. So, for example, if a teacher in Nairobi wants to use your report in his classroom, legally, he can't. If a local cooperative wants to adapt your research for their farming community, legally, they can't. Without a license, you will build an invisible wall because it is all right reserve protection. And that's where open license come to action, because open licenses can solve it. They let you do 4 critical things. First, you retain your copyright. It means you are still the owner. Second, you grant upfront permissions so people can reuse and adapt your work from day one. 3, you clarify the rules for both creators and users. And 4, you foster a legal, safe sharing ecosystem. Now, let's look at how this actually works. Creative Commons is the global standard for open licensing. Let's think of it as a set of Lego blocks. Every CC license is built from 4 possible elements, and you combine them to create the license that fits your needs. BY stands for attribution. This one is always included. It means users have to credit you as the creator. That's simple enough. The NC stands for non-commercial. If you add this, people can only use your work for non-commercial purposes. SA stands for share alike. This means if someone creates a derivative or adapted version of your work, they have to release it under the exact same license. ND stands for no derivatives. This one says, you can share my work, but you cannot change it in any way. By combining these 4 building blocks, we get 6 different licenses, ranging from the most open to the most restrictive. Now let's walk through them. The 6 CC license spectrum of openness. At the very most open end, we have CC0. That's the public domain dedication. The creator says, I give up all rights. Do whatever you want with this. CC0 is fantastic for raw data. Next is CC BY. The only requirement is attribution. Just credit the creator. This is what we recommend as the gold standard for open science publication. Use CC BY unless you have a very good reason not to. Then you have CC BY SA, meaning attribution plus share alike. This is the license used by Wikipedia. If you remix a Wikipedia article, your new article must also be share alike. That's one it needs. We also have CC BY NC, attribution plus non-commercial only. No commercial use is allowed here. Then you also have CC BY NCSA. This one adds share alike on top of non-commercial. And finally, the most restrictive of all, CC BY ND, meaning attribution plus no derivative. People can share your work, but they cannot change it at all. The absolute most restrictive CC license is actually CC BY NCND. That's non-commercial and no derivative. Honestly, that's barely open at all. So my strong recommendation, default to CC BY. It maximizes impact and empowers the ecosystem. The NC debate. So now I know what some of you are thinking. So for example, you will say, I don't want a big multinational corporation to take my work and make millions from it without giving back. Shouldn't I use NC to stop that? That instance makes perfect sense, but here's the problem. The NC restriction is a very blunt instrument. It doesn't distinguish between a giant corporation and a small tech startup that wants to build a helpful app. It blocks local cooperatives from using, maybe, for example, agricultural research to sell better crops. It can even restrict integration into educational materials if a funded NGO is technically considered a commercial entity. The word commercial is a legal gray area, and that uncertainty discourages legitimate beneficiary use. So what should we do? For open science, I recommend we use CC BY as our default. If we are really worried about a specific organization exploiting our work, we can use a targeted data sharing agreement, not just a blanket NCA restriction that penalizes the entire global community. That's what I wanted to add here. And particularly for using the Creative Commons licenses, there is a tool called the Creative Commons Chooser. Let me share the website, which is here. It's when you are not sure about the type of license you want to use, you can come here, choose a license for your work. So, for example, do you know which license you need? And then if I click yes, which license? You choose a license. For example, CC BY 4.0. And here are the attribution element. I will just add like the title of the work. Open tools. My name. And then you will have this. Choose the kind of work to get appropriately license code of domain. If it is the website, here's the link of the license. You can copy. Open tools. So let's change the here to 2026. You can copy it here. Or if it is an HTML, you can copy it here. If it is a print work of media, this is the plain text of your license, you can copy. So creativecommons.org chooser will help you if you are not sure about the license you are going to use. You can play around, go through the website, play with it, and it's easy to use, very easy. For the CCs, it's easy to use when you don't know exactly, or if you know exactly, or the kinds of restriction you have to put on your work. You just go here, you came here, you play with it, and then you will have the link, the text for your license. Let's get back to our presentation. Now, let's go beyond the Creative Commons licenses. Let's talk about softwares and specific licenses for data. And this point is very important. Do not apply Creative Commons CC licenses to software or codes. CC themselves explicitly say their licenses are not suitable for softwares. If you put a CC license on a Python script, you create legal ambiguity that helps no one. For software, for example, you need to use what are called free and open source software licenses, which is the FOSS licenses under the acronym FOSS, which is FOSS licenses. There are two main families. You have permissive licenses like MIT or Apache, which says, do whatever you want with this code, just give me credit. We have copyleft licenses like GPL v3, which says, if you modify my code and share it, you have to share your modification under the same terms. For datasets, use data-specific licenses. We have CC0, which is public domain, and it is considered the best practice for raw data. Or you can use the Open Data Common Attribution License, ODC BY. if you want to require credit, if you want attribution to your data, the same attribution for the people, for the person using the data, you can use the ODC by license. So let's remember this. CC license are good for text and media. First licenses for code, and data-specific licenses for data sets. Match the license to the output type. So, best practices for applying license, which is called the TRSL. Once you have chosen a license, you also need to know how to attribute other people's works correctly. I want to give us a simple memory tool. TRSL. T stands for title, the name of the work. A stands for author, the creator's name. S stands for source, a link to the original work. L stands for license, a link to the license deed. So if we use a photograph from Wikimedia Commons, we'll write something like sunsets over Lake Victoria by Elise Jafsia, sourced from wikimedia.org/example, license under CC by 4.0. But now that you have all this narrative, the text and the narrative, where do we put it? So we can put it at the beginning or the end of our document. It can also fit in the footer of a website or directly below an image caption, or embedded in a dataset metadata. Attribution is not just a legal requirement. It's a way of respecting the people who share their work with us. It builds a culture of gratitude and trust. So this is the end of this presentation, of this part, sorry. Now, let's jump to another activity to make sure that we understand what we said about open licenses. So let's put this into practice with one more scenario. This time it is a bit more complex because we have multiple outputs. So your organization in Uganda has developed three things. First, a conflict resolution training curriculum. Second, a data set of community dialogue. Third, a mobile app to track early warning signs. A funder requires that everything be open. But there is an ethical twist. The curriculum includes traditional oral teaching from community leaders. Here are our 4 questions for breakout rooms. 1, for the curriculum, which specific Creative Commons license will you apply? 2, for the data set, which specific data license will you apply? 3, for the mobile app, which specific first license will you apply? 4, now that's about the ethical dilemma, because we said the curriculum includes indigenous knowledge from the community elders. Can we apply a standard Creative Commons license to this material? Which is question 4. What are the ethical considerations if we have to apply a Creative Commons license on this traditional knowledge or indigenous knowledge? So we have 10 minutes. Graciela will send us into the breakout rooms. Let's discuss and then wrap up in 10 minutes.
All right, welcome back. I think in the interest of time, we are not gonna do some round summaries of the groups now. I think we can let Elise wrap up the presentation, and then we have some minutes dedicated to feedback and questions and things like that. Go ahead, Elise.
Thank you, Graciela. So, next slide. So I want to say something that I really hope you remember. There is no single right way to do open science. There is no perfect license or perfect tool that works for every situation. But any step you take, any small action to make your research, your data, or your programming more transparent and accessible, that step is valuable. The goal is progress, not progression, not perfection, sorry. So I'm going to ask you to pick just one action from this list and do it this week. 1, check your last publication or report. Does it have an open license? If not, add one. 2, visit the Creative Commons Chooser tool online and use it for your next output. 3, upload one data set to Zenodo with a CC0 license. 4, register on AfricArchive or any platform that is useful for you, and become part of an open access community. Just pick one, do it this week. That's how we build openness, one small step at a time. So here you are go to resources. You have the NASA Transform to Open Science Module 1 and 2. We have also Creative Commons Chooser that we can manipulate. We have element comment from Teaching and Learning Hub, the Open Science infographic from Ireland. So thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your thoughtful participation. My email is there. If you want to ask questions, please reach out. If you have questions or just want to continue the conversation, let's keep building open, equitable, and collaborative science together. Sorry. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future sessions.
Thank you, Elise. I think Adele is on.
Yeah,
We're wrapping
sure.
up. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Graciel, and thank you, FC, for the very well articulated conversation. It was very inspiring, and I can see the reaction from the members. It's very encouraging, and I hope that all of us have actually learned a lot. So I'll just give you 1 minute so that we can fill the feedback session. Yeah, you can just fill the feedback session so that we know how was your experience and all that. Yeah, so that even as you check out, we can actually know how the session was for you and what was very inspiring for you. Yeah, so we are very thankful for everyone, and we wish you well in the upcoming sessions. And it was glad to have you on board. You can still register for the various sessions that for the different facilitations that are taking place. And it was an honor to facilitate this session with the wonderful team of Graciela being our host and FC being our expert. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day. For those on the other side, you can have a wonderful night rest. Thank you. Bye-bye.